biggest challenge in your junior role isn't the work, it's getting access to the right people to get the work done. The good news, it's simpler than you think. In this video, I'll share the 4-step process I use to reliably get senior people's time and make every minute of it count. Hi everyone, I'm Jack, and over the past 3 years I've gone from a clueless kid studying engineering to a full-time senior engineer working in the Australian power sector. I've failed a lot along the way, which is why this channel exists, to provide the skills and frameworks that I found useful to help you build your own career in power. Today we're tackling one of the most common challenges faced in any junior role, getting time with the people you rely on to further your work. Because junior roles are time bound, the majority of the tasks as a junior are supporting the stream leads in their work, therefore are largely dependent on their input and support in order to progress. However, reality is that often these people are very busy, which leads to you tentatively approaching them with questions and diving down rabbit holes that you really don't need to and wouldn't have should you have asked them at the right time. Within my first internship, I faced this exact problem. Now, I was placed in a project management team and therefore needed to liaise with a lot of people on a day-to-day basis. Now, 90% of the time, these went smoothly. A lot of the communication was via Teams or through just talking to them at their desk. However, one person specifically I struggled with. Now, I actually sat next to this person and tried communicating with them in person, through Teams, but never succeeded, could never get any of their time. And only through actually booking a meeting, which I wouldn't think I would have needed as I used to sit exactly next to them, did I actually get their time consistently and start getting the outcomes I needed from that time. Which led to my understanding of the key point to getting access to people is, regardless of how busy they are, people will gladly and willingly give you their time as long as you learn to respect it. Upon learning this key, I completely transformed the way I both interact with people and ask for their time, of which I still use to this day and have summarized into 4 key steps I'm going to share with you guys. And just to reiterate, these 4 steps I've used as a undergrad, I've used as a grad, and now as a full-time engineer who has traversed across different tiers of senior management, communicating up and down. It really works for everything. Step number 1, do the preparation. Now, context to this step 1 is assuming that you've received a task, you've been handed it, whether it be by a senior engineer or your manager or the stream lead, as we're using the previous example, and you've been delegated this task and they're formulated up to you. You've got minimal context, but enough to be able to start the work. So step 1 is effectively all about working through the task to the extent of your knowledge. Now, it's more than likely that not enough context was provided in the handover for you to actively take and run with this task to the end of the earth and complete it. So it's all about using whatever tools work for you to work through the task, whether it be mapping it on a whiteboard, that's certainly my tool of choice, mapping it end to end, identifying who's involved with what stakeholders are involved, all depends on what it is. But effectively, the whole goal of this is to do as much as you can with your current knowledge base. And the ideal outcomes here are therefore, because you've worked through this to the end of your knowledge base, you'll have identified certain barriers preventing you from going any further. If there weren't any barriers and you were able to work through it to the end, perfect job, go to the next task. The rest of this video is largely not relevant. However, if you have identified certain barriers, effectively you've got to something and said, all right, I'm not sure what to do next, completely fine. Once you work through this task to the extent of your knowledge, you have ideally a list of those barriers, because most of the time it's not just one thing. And then once you've got those barriers, go through and assign, based upon your current knowledge, people that can help you get through those barriers. These are fundamental to the rest of the process. So 2 key outputs of step 1. Let's get to step 2. Step 2 is the fundamental step to this whole process. What we've done already is identify the barriers for which we need to contact people and get their time. We've identified the people. We now need to identify the communication strategy and therefore the time management strategy that these people prefer and adhere to that in order to respect their time. In my experience, I bucketed these communication or time management strategies into 2 types of people. The person on the left is the structured communicator. Now, these people prefer structured time allocation, a la they work via their calendar. Now, generally they're very time poor because of this. Well, seemingly time poor because their calendars are very structured and most of the time they're very full. And therefore their preferred communication channel is meetings. Now, characteristically, these are normally more senior people in the organization, generically managers, senior managers, execs. So if you want their time, generally they're structured communicators. Adversely to that is the ad hoc communicator. Now, these people prefer more ad hoc communication, meaning that they don't like to operate to a structured calendar and they can mix it up to facilitate different workloads. They are seemingly time rich. Now, I can comment on this because I would classify myself as an ad hoc communicator. Generally, your ad hoc communicators are more catered toward your deep workers, if you will. Now, these are the people who need 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour blocks in order to make active progress toward a task, because it is likely that these tasks are very complex, and therefore in order to get into that deep workflow, you've got to spend a fair bit of time on it. Now, in talking preferred channels, it's kind of interesting. You would assume that because they are an ad hoc communicator who need these 4-hour blocks, that they wouldn't like ad hoc communication, but if you think adversely to the structured communicator, they don't like meetings, they don't like being tied down, and they like being able to put everything on Do Not Disturb and get into a deep work state. So they're your different two. Ad hoc communicator prefer teams, which they can just batch through and smash through, or ad hoc chats, whereas a structured communicator prefers meetings. Now, using those two classifications, both the structured communicator and the ad hoc communicator, we want to progress with step 2. Effectively here, what we're going to do is identify the person of interest time management classification. To properly differentiate between a structured and ad hoc communicator, I'd suggest interrogating their calendar. More often than not, the structured communicator will have their calendar booked out, and the ad hoc communicator will not have their calendar booked out, and there'll be gaps in it. However, it also might be the case that the ad hoc communicator has time blocked their calendar. In this case, to confirm that, I would suggest a Teams message. So in either case, if you can't approach them in person, talk to them on Teams, just give them a high-level summary, which leads to the make informal contact point. Effectively, you just want to send them a brief Teams message, what you're about, what you're interested in, and whether they would be open and willing to offer their time. Here, it is probably relevant to confirm their style of communication and what they prefer. Do they prefer a meeting? Do they prefer a call in the mornings when they're not busy? This is really where you set that up, which leads to the output or outcome of step 2, which is number 1, the communication strategy for obtaining their time, which we just talked through then. And then number 2, an agreed upon time slot, which 90% of the time is usually a calendar meeting, regardless of whether they're a structured or ad hoc communicator. Step number 3, booking the time. Now, this is seemingly simple, but what I want to really highlight here is the purposeful objective. So, goal and purpose, scheduling a meeting in alignment with the time slot you identified in step 2. Purposeful objectives. Purposeful objectives are all about respecting their time through creating a direct purpose for the meeting. The last thing you want to do with a person who is extremely busy and is giving you this time very graciously is make them feel like they're wasting it. Because number 1, they'll sit in the meeting and be very in disinterest. However, number 2, they likely won't give you time again. And in the future, if you're heavily reliant on this person, you don't want to do that. So it's very important we adhere to these 4 purposeful objectives. Number 1, subject line. When you book a calendar meeting, what I'm calling the subject is the title of the meeting. Effectively, what you want to do here is capture a summary of the agenda in 8 words or less. A very concise purpose for the meeting. Number 2, the purpose. What I'm calling the purpose here is effectively the first sentence or 2 of the description of the calendar invite. What you want to do here is elaborate on the subject with a bit of context of what you're going to cover in the meeting. Number 3, the agenda. Now, this is a direct copy and paste from the barriers you identified in step 1 in dot point form. All this has to be is agenda in bold and then a dot point for each barrier, summarize that you want to address in the meeting. The agenda will largely dictate how long you want the meeting to go for. So if you've got an agenda that you're going to push to get through in half an hour, do it for an hour. If you think you can get through it in half an hour, do it in half an hour. Always be time conscious, but should you need more, it's always better to do an hour slot than do a half an hour, then try and rebook, because that's going to take another week or 2 in a busy person's calendar. Objective number 4 is the outcomes. You've got your agenda, you've got all of your different barriers that you want this person to help you work through. Outcomes is effectively what a successful meeting would look like. Through all of these 4 purposeful objectives, keep one thing in mind. Be concise. There is nothing worse than getting a calendar invite and it's a 3-page report that you've got to read through. And 99% of the time, nobody will read it. However, if you provide something that is concise, brief, and helps them to identify what this meeting's about and what they're going to need to prepare to discuss, Anything in dot point form that is very concise is absolutely what you want. Step number 4, executing the meeting. Now, this is pretty simple and there's 2 steps. So during the meeting, what you want to focus on. Number 1, using the invite to guide the discussion. The best thing about doing the purposeful objectives in step 3 is you have a direct template about what you want to discuss in the meeting. Number 2, take notes. Now, a lot of organizations have access to Copilot, and if you do, and you want to transcribe using Copilot for the purpose of taking notes so you can pay better attention, this is very applicable for highly technical meetings with technical SMEs. Always ask to begin with. Otherwise, if you're comfortable taking notes on OneNote while you're talking, do that. But taking notes is absolutely critical. There's no point to having a meeting if you're not going to take some sort of notes. Number 3, log action items. Now, this is kind of optional depending on what the meeting is. However, you're always going to have personal action items following a meeting, things you'll need to chase up after based on discussion. Now, this may be something that the other person will need to chase up on your behalf, which is important to log for the after meeting. And then number 4, be time aware. There's nothing worse than getting to 1 minute before the end of the meeting and then starting a whole nother discussion which lasts for 5 minutes. All right, so now for the after actions, and it's pretty simple. Summarize the notes and send out a summary. Whether it be note taken via Copilot or via OneNote, you'll have a notes and also add in the action items there and send out a summary. It's as simple as going to the calendar invite, clicking reply all, and sending an excerpt. It not only shows initiative, but it's also a record of what was discussed to show an actual meeting, and it shows some proactivity on your behalf. An important point to also note for step 4 is, if in future you're forecasting to be needing this person's time again, it's always useful to mention that within the meeting. Warming them up prior to you reaching out in the future is a great way to both increase that rapport with the person, but also demonstrate how proactive you are. So that's it, 4 steps. Prepare for the meeting, respect their time, book the time, and execute the meeting. Conducting these 4 steps in a row is the key to getting time and making the most of it. So, if you're currently in a junior position or any position in that matter, and find yourself struggling to work through a problem with a solution dependent on another team member, whether it be a manager, whether it be a stream lead, whether it be an exec, I challenge you to try out this 4-step process and watch yourself succeed in getting the time you need and making the most of it, and break through the barriers and find success. If this video helped you to work through a problem you're facing at work, feel free to comment down below, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.